Hi. So I'm Lindsay Rainey, and this is my partner here.
Hello, I'm Nima Karunanaika. Don't really have to say that, but
And we're doing questions 9 and 10 in part 2. So for part 9, Gregor Mendel, he finished his work in the 1860s and then said he died in 1884. And in his life, he studied the inheritance of genes through pea plants. And he discovered that there's dominant and recessive genes that play into how those genes are passed down from generation to generation. And some scientists tried to recreate his work, but they used a different plant. And so they didn't quite get the same results. And so they weren't sure if the things that he found were right or not.
yeah, and just like Lindsay said, he was kind of working on the patterns of inheritance from one generation to another one. And he also contributed to Mendel's laws of heredity. Is that how you say it? Kind of like the law of segregation and then independent assortment and the dominance. Yeah, so it was mainly about dominance and recessive and how it's inherited from one parent to their offspring.
And now we know a lot more about genetics because the work Mendel did. And they were able to start learning a lot more back then as well. So, and then for question 9, we learned about Darwin and Wallace. So Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands and he studied a bunch of different finches. And when he came back, he realized that the shape of their beak was different on each island from the help of someone else he was working with. But he realized that the climate was the same, and so he was thinking that there had to be a reason that they were all starting to change even though they lived in the same environment.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the idea behind natural selection. This was done in 1859. His main idea was that species do come from a common ancestor. And some of the other ideas like speculation, population pressure were like influenced with this one. And also like in the 19th century, with the advances of genes and mutations, it kind of proved that yes, it does. Species do really come from a common ancestor, and the main reason for that was because of survival and reproduction and how they're able to survive in a different climate and reproduce.
And I said that Wallace and Darwin were kind of discovering the same thing at the same time as they did this, but they didn't know that they were both studying the same thing. And then eventually they came together and talked about their theories, and Darwin read Wallace's work and realized that they learned the same exact thing, and so they went to present their theories in front of a bunch of other scientists, and eventually Darwin published a book called The Origin of Species, which introduced the theory of evolution and his findings to the world.